Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mohammed Shafiq, chair of the PCS National Black Members Committee. Welcome to our Facebook Live. We're on YouTube and we're also on Twitter, also now known as X, in this very important month, Islamophobia Awareness Month 2025. It takes place every year in November to raise awareness of anti-Muslim hatred, challenge the stereotypes and promote practical actions to combat Islamophobia in workplaces, in our communities, and within our public services. And as we gather here tonight, we see the real effects of racism and xenophobia. A 66-year-old man, Muslim man, was brutally murdered in a racially aggravated murder. He sadly died yesterday. A 24-year-old man has been arrested and charged with that crime. And we know across this country there will be people from very different backgrounds, whether they be Muslim or appear to look like Muslims, like our Sikh and Hindu brothers and sisters, who will also be feeling nervous, feeling vulnerable, and feeling as if their voice is not being heard. We send solidarity and love to all communities around the world that is suffering from discrimination, bullying, harassment, and victimization, and we stand together against that hatred. But we know over the last few months, we've seen the massive rise of racially aggravated attacks on Muslim people in this country. And that's why it's so important that the theme this year is flip the script. The script is quite simple, that we demonize Muslims. The language of the far right has become normalized in our media, in our politics, where only a few years ago things were taboo and wouldn't have been said, are now being said on a regular basis on the floor of the House of Commons by various politicians. And at a time when there's an increased level of attacks against mosques, as individual Muslims, as I said, people who look like Muslim, may not be Muslim, may come from other parts of the diverse community of this country, they are also affected, and that's going to be very, very important. And that inflammatory language we are seeing on migration, the rhetoric that we see, and also in the aftermath of what happened between Israel and Palestine, and we saw over 1,200 Israelis being killed on October the 7th, and then we saw subsequently nearly 70,000 innocent Palestinians being killed in Gaza, and the aftermath of that. Now, we know that Muslim workers in the civil service continually face disproportionate discrimination. They've been attacked physically at times, verbal abuses, and unfair treatment, both in promotion and career development, and a hostile workplace culture where they are demonized and attacked when it comes to disciplinary action. And that's why I'm proud of the fact that PCS, for our members, has been hard to make sure that they are supported and as they guide. According to the latest Home Office figures, because if people ask why is it so important that PCS embraces and celebrates and holds a special event for Islamophobia Awareness Month, it's because in the last 12 months ending March 2025, offences against Muslims went up to 3,199. That's a staggering 19% increase from the previous year. And also it is manifested in the language that we are used. And so really excited. We've got some really powerful testimony from speakers, but also some towering figures from within the British Muslim community as well. That's why I'm pretty proud of the fact that PCS at conference this year, where we have an annual conference in Brighton, and I just wanted to acknowledge Austin Harney. He's a very good friend of ours and colleague. He is from the Ministry of Justice Associated Offices, who proposed this motion at conference to get PCS to have an event during Islamophobia Awareness Month. I want to thank also the Revenue Customs East Midlands branch as well. So Austin, I hope you're watching. Thank you so much. This is the fruit of your labor, and we're very, very grateful for you and all that you do on behalf of your members in your branch, but also for the National Union as well and communities. Okay, without further ado, we've got quite a few speakers. We'll get through them and then we'll open it up. If you're watching this on Facebook, you can post your comments again on YouTube as well, and we're on Twitter, X as well. If you want to get in touch, you can message us, and your messages and questions will be put to our guest. First of all, really proud to have a great ally. We were with him at weekend when we said he's amongst friends when he comes to National Black Members Committee events. Really proud to have him as our national president, Martin Kavanagh. Martin, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Cheers, Mohammed. Thanks very much. And good evening, everybody. First of all, can I thank Mohammed and the National Black Members Committee for inviting me to address tonight's event. Islamophobia Awareness Month is absolutely key to our union's continued drive to eradicate racism and fascism, not just from our communities and from our society, but also from workplaces and, if need be, from the trade union movement itself. And I say that because clearly right now we are seeing times that are incredibly difficult for those who are Muslim, who are faith, who are Jewish, who are black, who are people of colour in this country, where we're seeing the rise of the far right and the political and mainstream media narrative continually throwing up hostility and trying to sow hatred and division. And so it really is important, I think, as myself as national president is addressing this meeting tonight, not just as an absolute ally to everyone watching, but to get the message across that PCS will continue to be at the forefront of eradicating racism and fascism wherever it raises its head. And I'm really proud of the work that we've been doing as a trade union over a number of years now, when we first devised with our black member colleagues the Araf strategy, which at the time was meant to try and get an alternative narrative to the hate and division that was being sown by the then BNP, to try and create division within our society. We absolutely led from the front at that stage, and we've continued to do so at every single stage over these past number of years. But right now, over the last 12, 18 months, we've continued to see an absolute increase in hostility. And it is no coincidence, is it, that Islamophobia in particular is on the rise in this country. And Mohammed's absolutely right to highlight the statistics that are coming through about that rise in Islamophobia. Anyone who understands Muslims, anyone who understands Islam and the faith of Islam understands that it is a peaceful religion. It is a religion that is there to bring peace and solidarity across communities, not create division and hatred. And yet the political and mainstream media narrative continues to go further and further towards the right, targeting in particular people of Muslim faith, but not just Muslim faith, anybody, as I said earlier on, of colour. And it's why we as a trade union are absolutely determined to work alongside other organisations such as MEND, such as Stand Up to Racism, such as Hope Not Hate, to try and get the message across that the mainstream media narrative and sadly the mainstream political narrative that is currently prevalent in this country is not the answer. It is not anything other than something that we should argue and fight against. And when I say fight, I don't mean in an aggressive manner. I mean in a manner because we absolutely understand, that the reason why the far right narrative is getting traction, the reason why people are lurching further and further in their views towards that division and hatred rhetoric, is because politicians and the mainstream media and political parties have failed to live up to their promises year on year for the masses of this country. And people therefore are looking for somebody to blame, looking for somebody to scapegoat. And when you have people like Tommy Robinson on the street, but sadly now people like Nigel Farage sitting in Parliament, all too happy to create the narrative that it is somebody else's fault. It is asylum seekers and migrant workers who are to blame. It is people from foreign fields coming into this country that are the ones who are creating overpriced rents and the possible task of trying to get on housing lists, are responsible for the length of the NHS waiting lists and for suppression of low pay. When that narrative becomes the mainstream norm, then it is easy to understand rather than accept, but easy to understand why people will jump to that narrative. Because it is an easier narrative to give if you're a politician than blame yourselves. It's an easier narrative than to blame the government, the people who are really responsible for all the conditions that create the rise of the far right. And when we say that we're trying to flip the script this month, a really important message, I believe, absolutely really important message. And that is exactly why PCS developed the against racism, against fascism narrative in the first place. Because it is not just enough to say that these views and these behaviours that we're now seeing primarily in our communities are wrong. We have to absolutely give an alternative narrative as to why Islamophobia is fundamentally wrong, is why racism is fundamentally wrong, is why the anti-asylum seeker, anti-migrant rhetoric is wrong. Because we understand as a trade union that actually this country is built on immigration, whether it be migrants coming in from Ireland, from the Caribbean, from other parts of the then Commonwealth, or whether it is in recent times people fleeing persecution and oppression in their homelands. We've always understood the beauty of asylum seekers, the beauty of people who seek refuge in this country because of what they bring to our communities, what they bring to our society, what they bring especially to our public services. And as a trade union that clearly has majority of our membership in the civil service and related bodies, but a trade union that understands absolutely what it is like to operate and provide services to the public, both face-to-face and back of house. We understand, therefore, that without migration, without influxes of people from other countries coming into the UK over generations, we would not be where we are now as a nation, and the public services that we do provide would not be in the state that they are now. And one very, very simple narrative around that, and one very simple, I think, visual thing that we can get across is this: that if you go to any hospital, if you go to any NHS practice, whether it be a hospital or a centre or a GP surgery, and you take away what reform Tommy Robinson and the far right would like to take away, and you would be left with a negligible, if any, existing service at all. And that is just one example as to why we understand that is wrong, the narrative that is currently the prevalent in this society. And so when we do argue against it, and when we do articulate and we stand on platforms, quite rightly standing up, saying that it is not enough to look for a scapegoat, it is not enough to seek to someone else to blame. Instead, what we should be doing is arguing for progressive policies that allow working people of this colour, regardless of their religion, faith, belief, or colour or creed, regardless of any of that, we absolutely have to give a positive narrative. We, of course, want a better, fairer society. We, of course, want our members and other workers to have better pay, decent, secure work, better housing, a shortening of NHS waiting lists, our finest tradition, the National Health Service, to be brought back in proper National Health Service under public ownership. And we want to eradicate those waiting lists, of course we do. We also want to see people have access to better services, better education and the like. But we don't achieve any of that by targeting and scapegoating minority people who come into this country. The narrative that we currently see about people who come in on small boats are somehow scrounging off the state and getting a leg up. We saw only this week in Parliament where we're launching alongside others our latest parliamentary report, which shows the economic benefits of migration, which shows what people bring to our economy and our community and our society when they come and settle into this country. That narrative made it absolutely clear that rather than the current perspective that is too far easily readily available from the far right reform, and even now, sadly, the likes of the Labour Party and the Tories as well, that somehow people who are seeking asylum are living it up in luxurious hotels, who are getting benefits thrown at them that UK citizens can't access. We know as a trade union that none of that is true, it is false, and the exact opposite is the reality. Many of the hotels that people are campaigning as outside and demonstrating outside are actually places that we would never ever dream of going to ourselves, are places that we certainly would never dream of sending or hoping our families would ever have to reside in. Many of these places are damp, are literally places of squalor, and they are not, as I say, anywhere that we would aspire to visit, let alone live in day out. And we also know that the level of benefits accessible by those who are fleeing persecution and coming into our asylum system while they wait for their perfectly legal process to be followed. We know that rather than the luxury that is allegedly reported, we understand that actually it is more like £9 a week, or if there isn't an ability for people to have food, £7 a day. That is not anything that gives anyone any decent standard of living. People cannot find work. They can't get an employment. And we all know the prospects of finding employment, if you don't have that financial leg up in the early days of entering a nation, is severely restricted. And that's why we've continued to push for a safe routes policy where people can have their asylum claims processed quickly and in order. And whilst they're waiting for those claims to be processed, they can have access to those services that we all enjoy. Access to those services, because that will give them a better chance of being productive members of our communities and society. And that is what we absolutely want. But you don't have to take my word for it as a trade union leader. That is the message that our members tell us continually. Those who work in the Home Office, those who work in the Border Force. It's why we fought the pushback against the pushback policy, and we defeated it. It's why we fought against the Rwanda plan and defeated it. And it's why we're pushing now for safe routes for those who are in asylum. But absolutely, the message I will finish on tonight, Mohammed, is this, and I look forward to any questions during the Q&A later on, is we as a trade union, as part of our wider movement, know that there are climate circumstances right now that we absolutely have to change. We have to give people hope that they can have a better, fairer future. But that better, fairer future can include people in the Muslim faith, but also Black colleagues and people of colour. It can, and it absolutely should do, because it is that rich heritage that we have brought into our country over generations now that has made us the country we are. We have always been open to helping the most oppressed. We have always been a strong voice for those who otherwise wouldn't have a voice. And we should all absolutely work tirelessly to ensure we continue to be just that moving forward. So thank you very much, Mohammed, tonight for the opportunity, the work that you and all of the National Black Members Committee do on behalf of PCS, both within our union, but also as part of the wider TUC and trade union movement, is a credit to yourselves, is a credit to your cultures, and it's a credit absolutely to the trade union movement. And I look forward to continuing working with you in the weeks and months ahead, and any further platforms that we share, I will be proud to do so, comrade, because you are a credit to our trade union, to yourself, your family, and everything that is good in this society. So thank you, and look forward to speaking to everyone later.
Thank you so much, Martin. Yeah, great to serve under your leadership, and thank you for all that you do as well, and very much looking forward to working with you in the weeks and months to come. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is the CEO of MEND, which is a community organization. She's a community activist, describes herself as a community activist, but she's got a background in human rights law. She's got a degree in law, a master's degree in human rights law from the University of Strathclyde in Scotland. Lindsay Taylor is the CEO of MEND. I'm really honoured that you are here with us. Lindsay, the floor is yours, and very warm welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. I really appreciate it. And, you know, I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for everyone who has taken the time to organise this, and especially the individual who brought the motion to ensure that PCS was marking Islamophobia Awareness Month this year. So I was asked today to talk about community engagement and the importance of community engagement. But what I want to do first is really highlight what Islamophobia is. I am sure that there's many listening just now who are not fully aware of what Islamophobia is. So there's a definition which is commonly used in the UK. It's the APPG, that's the All-Party Parliamentary Group definition. It was brought in 2018, and it was accepted by all political parties barring the English and Welsh Conservative Party. And I say that because the Scottish Conservatives actually accepted the APPG definition as well. Now, what did that say? It said Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. Now, this is really important because, as Mohammed said earlier, it's not just Muslims who suffer from Islamophobia. It's those that, unfortunately, people just think look like Muslims or are Muslims, and they end up being attacked as well. Now, also, Islamophobia, we talk about the attacks in the street, and that's, I think, how most people know Islamophobia. They think of it as the sister having her hijab pulled off in the middle of the street, or the older man being shouted at because he has a beard. and all of these kind of things. Now, this is a horrendous side of Islamophobia, the street-based violence that we see. Now, we've seen the rise of Islamophobia attacks on individuals, but also on mosques. And obviously we saw an arson attack happening while people were still inside that mosque very recently happening. And we've seen this growing time and time again over the UK over the last year. And it's something that we have to take incredibly seriously. But Islamophobia is not just the attacks in the street. It's also the lack of access to services. It's the fact that you are 3 times less likely to get an interview for a job simply from having a Muslim-sounding name. It's the fact that when a Muslim woman goes to interview, she's more likely to be asked about her caring requirements at home, which we know is not permissible, but she'll answer them because it's taken her so long to get that interview. It's the fact that a Muslim woman who then does finally get a job is less likely to speak up when she's in employment about her needs, her requirements, and her rights, because it's been so difficult to get that job in the first place. It's about the issues around education. It's about the issues in employment. It's about the issues in schooling. When we saw the NSPCC put out a report some years ago highlighting that they were taking calls and engaging with children who were bullied at school because they were being called terrorists and bombers. Now, we know that all of these things don't happen individually. We know that these things don't happen because some small child wants to turn around and be mean to another small child, although that is bullying and that is what happens. But where does that language come from? Where does the language of terrorist or bomber towards a child who is Muslim by another child come from? It comes from the narratives that we see on the news. It comes from the narratives at home. It comes from the narratives from media and politics. And this is what we really need to address, because Islamophobia is not just a hate crime in the street. It's the marginalisation of communities. It is the continual removal of communities' rights. It's bringing in legislation. It's bringing in actions that limit communities from engaging or being able to engage properly in systems and in processes. It's the fact that many Muslims feel isolated from wider society and wider community and won't engage with politics in many different spheres in many different ways because of that isolation. And MEND is an organisation which is there to help to change that, because our role is to help to educate communities and support communities to understand what Islamophobia is, what the issues are, and what they can do to tackle that. Now, we deliver lots of training across the board to many different organisations, but often to Muslim organisations and Muslim individuals. But Islamophobia Awareness Month is about flipping the script. It's about changing that narrative, because MEND also delivers training and offers support to organisations and individuals who are not Muslim. And this, to me, is the absolute priority, because it's not for Muslims to eradicate Islamophobia in the way that it's not for any marginalised community to eradicate the phobia or the issues that are faced towards them. It's actually about wider society. It's about what we can do as organisations and individuals to help tackle the issues and the problems that marginalised communities are facing. So today, PSC is an organisation which is there as a trade union for organisations, for employers, for employees. It's there across the board. So what can the organisation do, and what can the individuals within this organisation do? So they can look at things like name-blind applications, and I'm sure in many places that's already in place. They can look at ensuring that their interview systems are fair and that their processes are appropriate. They can look at making sure that internal hiring, especially when you're looking at hiring within higher roles, managerial and top positions, that actually they're open and accessible to everybody in a fair and appropriate way. Now, I had a meeting recently with the Cabinet Secretary of Education of Scotland, and there were some civil servants there, and they highlighted the fact that within the civil service in Scotland, it is a very white organisation. It's a majority white organisation. And they're actually looking to make sure that they are bringing in proper steps and processes to make sure that everybody feels welcome within their organisation and that they can progress up the career ladder, because this is incredibly important. Because it can't just be down to the individual and it can't just be down to the minority communities. It has to be down to wider society to help and put in place those structures and processes to make sure that everybody is able to access everything in an equal, appropriate manner. So that's what I asked today. I asked that all of you look at different things that you can do to flip the script. So as employers, what can we do? I've already highlighted name-blind applications, making sure that the processes and procedures are in place, but making sure also that the culture is in place within your organisation. Is the culture within your organisation still that everybody goes to the pub on a Friday after work, and that's where actually some of the most kind of big things at work happen, because that's where the discussions are happening? Because that's not an appropriate culture for everybody. And not just Muslims, but for many people, that's not an appropriate culture. Is the culture within work that actually time is not flexible during Ramadan or holidays of any religious type? Because again, that's putting people off to not want to engage with organisations. Because making sure that people have flexible working hours, or making sure that people can ask for specific holidays off and so forth when it becomes to their religious practice, because it's not just important for Muslims, that's important for everybody. And making sure that this is an easy and approachable conversation that people can have, because often employers will say, yeah, that practice in place, but when people actually come to engage with it and ask for it, it can be a very difficult thing. But also within your organisation, is it an easy place to have conversations? Is it an easy place to make sure everybody feels welcome and secure and appropriately engaged within the organisation? But as individuals, there's also lots we can do. There's lots of things that we can do within our organisations, but there's lots of things that we can do at home. Now, Baroness Warzi highlighted that Islamophobia passes the dinner table test. Now, what do we mean by that? What she meant by that is that in polite society, everyday people, Islamophobia is acceptable and permissible, and people don't call it out. That many people around their dinner table at night sit and have conversations where actually it would be deemed quite Islamophobic and inappropriate to have these conversations if you were talking about disability or race or any other protected characteristic. But for some reason, when we're talking about Islamophobia and Muslims, actually the bar is so much lower. So what are your conversations around a dinner table? Can you flip the script there? Can you actually go home and have the conversations and say, actually, I went to a training session today, or actually, I listened to a session today and it talks about Islamophobia and some of the issues that Muslims and individuals are facing. And I think we need to have a conversation about it. Can you go and do some research? Is there information available in your workplace about it? Are there policies and practices already in place that can really help? And I'm sure within a trade union, there are lots of policies and practices already in place, but do they expand into all of the organisations that are being worked with? But in the home, can we make sure that we're having those conversations? Can we do a little bit more learning? At the school gates, when we're dropping our kids off, can we have those conversations with fellow mums and dads and carers and parents? Because this is what it's about. It's about changing the narrative on the ground. It's about challenging the narrative when you hear politicians talking about, as was highlighted by our previous speaker, talking about migrants and how they're the issue. But actually, no, the issue is generations of politicians who have not properly funded the NHS, not properly funded our services, and aren't taking care of the provisions for our communities and societies. So can we challenge our narratives there? Can we have deeper and bigger conversations? Can we do simple things like at Doors Open Days or the mosque open days? Can we go along and have conversations and learn a little bit more about the mosque and about the people who utilise that organisation and those services? Because this is what it's all about. It's about educating ourselves. It's about making sure that we know what's going on and what's happening, and it's about making sure that we have those conversations. It's about making sure that our workplaces are in an appropriate way for engaging with everybody, and that everybody feels safe and welcome and secure within your organisation. It's about making sure that our children are growing up in a society which is actually looking to eradicate Islamophobia and all forms of discrimination, because tackling one form of hate is tackling all forms of hate. It's not just about tackling Islamophobia. It's about tackling prejudice against disabled people. It's about tackling prejudice everywhere that we see it, because we want to be able to hand on a better society to our children than we inherited ourselves. And unfortunately, I don't feel that that's the way it is just now. Unfortunately, it feels as though actually we're passing on a society which is not better placed than the one we took on ourselves. So I'm going to leave you all with that final thought, and I'm going to ask you all to take home just one action, and that is flip the script. Go home, have the conversations around your table, go into your workplaces, have those conversations, and look at how we can galvanise the whole of society, not just communities, because it's not just about one community tackling an issue. It's about the whole of society getting on board, getting engaged, and actually taking the appropriate steps. Now, there's loads of information on Men's website where you can go and download some guides and some information about Ramadan and about other things that can really help Muslims within your workplace. But it's about educating yourself. So please, everybody, let's work together and let's build a better society for the future. Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you so much. I know it's been a difficult month for you because you must be very, very busy and everybody wants a piece of you. So thank you so much once again for all the work that you do, not just in Scotland, but I know across the country. We're very, very grateful. Lindsay, I know you're going to stay with us. men.org.uk is on the bottom of the screen. Thank you so much as well. And if you are just joining this very important session on behalf of PCS, here on the PCS Facebook page, we're also on Twitter, X. This is our Islamophobia Awareness Month 2025 session. Now, Islamophobia is not an abstract word. It's a daily reality for hundreds of thousands of British Muslims. It's the fear, hatred, and discrimination directed at Muslims primarily because of the faith that they follow. And it has no place in the United Kingdom. Today, I'm going to ask you to stand with our Muslim neighbours, our Muslim colleagues, our Muslim friends and brothers and sisters, and commit together that we can end this poison once and for all. Let me give you some facts. In 2024 alone, according to organisations monitoring anti-Muslim hatred, they recorded over 3,600 verified incidents in England alone. That's the highest figure ever. And that's one Islamophobic attack every 2.5 hours. You know, obviously, when there are major events around the world and here in the UK, particularly, we remember the spike of events after the dreadful events in Southport, where those 3 beautiful angels were brutally murdered, where false rumours spread on social media that the attacker was a Muslim asylum seeker. And we saw anti-Muslim hatred and hate crimes surged by more than 500% in some police force areas. So what does that look like in our streets? Women wearing the hijab or the niqab are amongst the most visible targeted. In London, Birmingham, Manchester, beyond, Muslim women have been spat at, they've been punched, they have had their hijab ripped off, or they've been pushed in front of moving vehicles. In 2023, a pregnant Muslim woman in hijab was kicked so violently in the stomach that she lost her baby. The perpetrator told police he did it because she was Muslim. Mosques, our place of worship, are repeatedly attacked. In the weeks after the October the 7th attacks in Israel, and again after the Southport tragedy, mosques in Belfast, Liverpool, Sunderland, and Newham received bomb threats. Bacon was thrown at doors, windows were smashed, and worshippers were followed home. In County Durham, a mosque was firebombed while people prayed inside. In the aftermath of the synagogue terrorist attack in Manchester, the mosque in Peacehaven was firebombed by two men in a racially aggravated offence. So ordinary Muslims also face violence. In Harrow, a man was repeatedly stabbed and told this is for Gaza. In Nottingham, two students wearing Palestinian badges were beaten unconscious. And in Plymouth, a taxi driver had his throat slashed simply for being perceived as Muslims. And I did show you earlier on the gentleman, the 66-year-old gentleman who was brutally attacked in Eastbourne in Sussex, which is not far from where the mosque attack in Peacehaven was. And he sadly, his name was Muhammad Sinai. He was a 66-year-old man, and he was in intensive care for many, many days. He died last night in intensive care, and our love and prayers go out to his family, his friends, and his community. So I just want to say that these are not isolated incidents. They're part of a pattern that makes British Muslims feel like second-class citizens in our own country. Islamophobia tears at the fabric of society. It derives talented young Muslims out of public life, and it hands a propaganda victory to the very extremists who wish to divide us. But we can stop it. We stop it by calling out every single time in the street, in the workplace, in the union, in the media, and in Parliament. We stop it by properly funding the police to investigate hate crimes and by teaching the true diversity of British Islam in every school. We stop it when politicians refuse to scapegoat Muslims for votes and when all of us, regardless of faith, said loudly, "Not in my name." Britain is stronger when every citizen feels free and safe to practice their faith, wear what they want, live their life, and walk the streets of this country without fear. Muslim or not, it's all about all of us. Tackling Islamophobia is not political correctness. It is the defense of Britain that we love, tolerant, decent, diverse, and united. So thank you so much to everybody who are watching. Please share this widely, and we'll continue to support the work that the National Black Members Committee is doing. Okay, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Imam Qari Asim, MBE. He's the co-chair of the newly launched British Muslim Network. He's a senior imam at the Leeds award-winning mosque called Makkah Mosque, and he's a legal director in his day job at the global law firm DLA Piper. He chairs the Mosque and Imams National Advisory Board, and he serves as a senior editor of Imams Online. He's a trustee of British Future, Peace Matters, Hope Not Hate. He's deeply committed to promoting cohesion and tackling extremism. He sits on the ITV Yorkshire's Diversity Board, Oxfam Advisory Board, and the Regional Leadership Board of Mosaic, which was founded by His Majesty the King when he was Prince of Wales. He's passionate about interfaith relations. He's a trustee of the Christian Muslim Forum. He's a director of the Forum for Promoting Peace, and he's a faith advisor to the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust and Near Neighbours. And his leadership extends across organisations focused on education, youth, gender, equity, and social welfare. And he's written and appeared in many different outlets in the media. Imam Qari Asim, a very warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum Assalam and good evening. I'm really grateful to PCS for marking Islamophobia Awareness Month, and thank you to Muhammad Shafiq for hosting this really important conversation and discussion around Islamophobia. So my presentation is about realities of Islamophobia, and hopefully you will be able to see some of those slides. I'm going to cover about what Islamophobia is, the manifestation of Islamophobia, the impact of Islamophobia, the causes of Islamophobia, and more importantly then touching upon this issue whether Islam is a threat to British way of life. And then finally, I'll also touch upon the definition of Islamophobia. So let's first look at the what Islamophobia is. That my predecessor, the speaker, Lindsay, touched upon that. And I'm also going to mention that there's no universally accepted definition of the term Islamophobia. but it's not about protecting the faith Islam itself. And the reason I'm emphasizing that is because sometimes we see that those who want to attack Muslims, or those who want to not have any definition of Islamophobia, they often say that, well, Islamophobia is about protecting the faith, and therefore there's no place in Britain, and this is about introducing blasphemy law through the back door. That's absolutely not the case. This is about protecting people who are being abused, whose lives are being threatened because of their faith. Islamophobia denies people's dignity, rights, and liberties, and that's what we're trying to protect here. Protecting on the streets as well as online, as well as tackling some of those systematic issues that discriminate and that lead to Muslims being treated differently. So the various organizations have coined terms such as anti-Muslim hatred, anti-Muslim hostility, anti-Muslim racism, or intolerance towards Islam. And I've also mentioned in the slide how Runnymede in 1997 coined this term, Islamophobia, defining it as a shorthand way of referring to dread or hatred of Islam, and therefore to fear or dislike of all or most Muslims. And interestingly, the UN definition, they haven't defined Islamophobia as such, but how they refer to Islamophobia is that basically this is about threatening, harassment, abuse, incitement, or intimidation of Muslims and non-Muslims. So those who are targeted because they're perceived to be Muslims, and we will come on to this because the current government has actually set up a working group to define Islamophobia, and which they have presented their findings to the government, which they are currently considering. So now moving on to the state of hate in the UK, we've already heard how in 2010, that's like 15 years ago, Baroness Varsi mentioned that the Islamophobia had passed the dinner table test. But on the other hand, what we're seeing is that there's still denial about Islamophobia, that some people refer to as overblown propaganda, or that this is a hate crime epidemic of a self-sustaining myth. And this been happening for the last 10 years. There's a lobby that want to deny people being protected, which really defies belief, but that's what Muslims are experiencing. On the other hand, Lord Greenhalgh, when he was the faith minister of the previous government, interestingly, he himself acknowledges in one of the debates in the parliament, saying that nearly half of all religious hate crime for so many years has been against Muslims. So this is a consistent pattern that we're seeing, according to even the government's own stats, that almost half of the religiously aggravated hate crime is targeted towards Muslims. And then we've obviously come across various other hate monitoring outlets that have actually recorded the hate crime. Now, moving on to the alarming levels of anti-Muslim hatred that we experiencing in this country. So just last month, the Home Office figures show that there's been 19% increase in Islamophobia, anti-Muslim hostility following the Southport murders and riots that followed. And then just last week in Leeds, there was a launch of anti-Muslim prejudice toolkit, and the findings showed that 75% of Leeds Muslims were concerned about anti-Muslim hostility. And that's not just about Leeds. Actually, across the country, you see that almost 2/3 of Muslims would have experienced some form of anti-Muslim hostility, anti-Muslim prejudice. And so it's not a sign of a healthy society by any stretch of the imagination that there is a large group of people that are experiencing anti-Muslim hatred because of who they are, because of their faith. And we know the consequences of that. 30 years ago, we saw the consequences of this hatred leading to genocide of Bosnian Muslims. And then if you look at other, like whether the Holocaust or other genocides, they don't start overnight. They don't happen in vacuum, but rather this lack of challenge towards hatred of a particular community because of their faith identity, because of their other identities, that when that goes unchallenged, then unfortunately elimination, marginalization, it leads to discrimination, it leads to isolation, it leads to all sorts of unhealthy, to say the least, unhealthy happenings in a society. And then, I've also reported the survey by ITV News in 2023, which highlighted that almost 90% of mosques across the UK had experienced acts of hate crime. And that's a theme that's ongoing. Just moving on, we've seen that British Muslim Trust a couple of weeks ago, they highlighted the 5 incidents happening just on one day, 5 incidents of hate crime against Muslims or Muslim institutions happening, being recorded on one day. And obviously the figures of 19% and 45% increase in Muslim hatred. Now, I want to touch upon the public attitudes towards Muslims, because this is something that Hope Not Hate, where I'm a trustee, we focused on this. And so we've been tracking this trend since 2017, and I've shown on this graph that how 37% of Brits see Islam as a threat to the British way of life, and there are various narratives in the media that portray Muslims as a security threat and or threat to our way of life. And then and that's not just Hope Not Hate figures, but also in 2022, the University of Birmingham carried out research which almost showed the same figures, that almost 37% of British people agreeing that Islam threatens the British way of life. And then you can see how negative narratives are born out of this theme that Islam, Muslims are incompatible with the British way of life. And if we just move on to the next slide, you will see that this trend that Hope Not Hate has followed the polling since 2018. Now, what's interesting and also tragic about this is that actually in the last 7 years, we've seen that there's been consistency about attitudes towards Muslims, but also in recent years there's been increase, especially in the last couple of years, that actually has gone from 35%, 37% to 44% people having negative attitudes towards Muslims. Now, we touched upon earlier how the Gaza-Israel conflict and the destruction and death that's taken place in Gaza, how that's impacted on attitudes towards Muslims in this country. Just moving on, Hope Not Hate polling has shown that 28% identified having negative views of Muslims in relation to the Israel-Palestine conflict. And so we, in our polling, we categorized and classified 5 categories of people in terms of their responses. And one of those categories of people were, who had hostile responsive towards. And so 64% of the group referred to as responsive hostile admitted that their attitudes towards Muslims had grown more hostile as a result of what was happening in Gaza. And for this group, the conflict has hardened their hostility towards Muslims, presenting opportunity to recommit to their anti-Muslim views with refreshed narratives. And the reason why I'm emphasizing on this is that what happens then, if there are people out there, obviously, who want to exploit and manipulate impressionable young individuals, and so then they present these refreshed narratives to such individuals, and they, as a result, recommit their anti-Muslim sentiments and anti-Muslim views, and then sometimes that leads to abuse and persecution as well. Now, in the next graph, what our polling has shown, the Hope Not Hate polling has shown that actually how the attitudes differ between different age groups. So people between the age of 18 and 24, the young group, you know, their views about Muslims that are that Islam is a threat to British way of life is about 11%, whereas 65 plus people, there is like going up to 43%. Now, what that shows in a way that how our lack of exposure to Muslims, or our lack of understanding of Islam and Muslims leads to us becoming more hostile. So this plugs into the what my predecessor speaker mentioned, Lindsay, the how in a way we need to change those attitudes, and in this multicultural, multi-faith society, the more we learn about each other, it has an impact on our. Few slides down, I'm going to talk about, we've obviously touched upon, Muhammad Shafiq has touched upon some of the examples of abuse, so I'm not going to go into that, but just highlighting that just in the last 3 months, 27 mosques were targeted. And that's not, these are not just isolated incidents, but actually a series of a pattern that's developing. And as a result of these attacks around mosques, we have lost Muslims in this country. You know, Finsbury Park mosque attack that happened in 2017. Then in Oldham, Mohsin Ahmed, he lost his life in 2016 because he was targeted whilst going to the mosque, and also called a groomer, and abuse that he suffered. Now, so people have lost their lives because of anti-Muslim hatred and Islamophobia in this country. So when Muslims talk about the fear and anxiety that they're experiencing, this is not an abstract issue, but rather affecting people's lives, not only just online or in the supermarkets. Like I know of a young girl who was targeted in the supermarket, and as a result, you know, she was frightened to go to any supermarket for 3 to 6 months. And so it impacts people in different ways, and it affects their lives, not only just one person's life, but the whole family's life. And then moving on to, you know, how do we manifestation of Islamophobia? If we talk about how does it manifest itself? We've learned about how people are targeted on streets, but also how Muslims are portrayed, how physical and verbal attacks and damage to property results in increasing Islamophobia, the implicit discrimination, the lack of cultural acceptance, and also the absence of Muslim voices in politics, journalism, and culture. All of these, you know, play a role in the manifestation of Islamophobia in our country. Now, moving on a few slides, we're going to go to the causes of Islamophobia. And they are, you know, like effectively lack of awareness of, and misconceptions about Islam. How we've seen, you know, people saying all sorts of things about Islam and British way of life, but also the political rhetoric that Martin touched upon earlier. Or there are no-go areas, or Muslims are the fifth pillar, aliens different, all of that. And then moving on to the role of media, you know, how media uses inflammatory headlines, like for instance saying Christian child forced into Muslim foster care, but actually when you look at the storyline, that's not the case at all, and so on and so forth. Then I'm going to finally end on what are practical steps that we can take. And the practical, I think one of the key things that we need to urgently press on is that we need to have a definition of Islamophobia. You know, a definition of Islamophobia will hopefully focus on harm being experienced by Muslims in their daily lives, not a restriction on free speech, and also not undermine any counterterrorism legislation. A practical definition that can be applied to deter those who currently do not
Hi. Sorry, I think we're having just connection issues there, Imam Kari Asim, but I think he was coming to the end. Obviously, talking a bit about the security threat narrative, the cultural incompatibility, and immigration as well. And we see the rhetoric so obvious in our politics and particularly in social media. Just wait for Imam Sahib to come back to wrap up. But thank you so much, Imam Kari Asim. I'm just conscious of time, and I wanted to give a last speech as well to my friend and colleague, my dear sister. She's Nasreen Ahmed. She's worked in the civil service for over 30 years. She's a passionate union member for all that time in PCS and its predecessor unions, the CPSA. She's an activist for the last 10 years, following her negative experience and seeking to prevent injustice for others. Various roles in HMRC and DWP. She's currently a part-time working mum doing a work coach role, and she's also and practice a member of the DWP Group Executive Committee alongside me and Martin. She's a branch treasurer, regional equality, and she's also the representative on the National Black Members Committee. She attends many protests and demos across this country, and she's always standing in solidarity with people as well. She's got a really powerful blog, which we're going to publish very, very shortly to commemorate the end of Islamophobia. I keep mentioning Holocaust Memorial Day. That's because this year we did our very first Holocaust Memorial Day, and we're hoping, God willing, we're going to do our second one in January 2026. So keep watching out for that. But solidarity messages on the screen there from Angela Grant, DWP Group President, and she's also a member of the NEC, and also Zulf Aziz from Burnley in Lancashire branch, and also I thought I saw Tracy Hilton, who is my deputy, is my strength. She's part of the dream team. She is the vice chair of the National Black Members Committee. Over to you, Nasreen. Thank you so much. I didn't want to give too much away about your blog because I know it's so powerful. I was blown away by it. If you can switch your camera on whilst you're doing that, remind people that there are some questions and comments coming through. We'll go through some of them as well. But Nasreen, over to you.
Thank you. So firstly, I want to express my sincerest thanks to my dear brother and comrade, Mohammed Shafiq, and the National Black Members Committee for inviting me tonight for this important conversation, and for all the hard work they do. And believe me, since I've been on the GC, I've seen how much work they do. And all the people behind the scenes tonight, Dave and Laura, who are doing all the technical bits behind the scenes, and all the other brilliant speakers tonight, really inspiring talks. So my talk is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to speak about my own personal experiences. So growing up in the 70s and 80s, we lived in constant fear of the National Front. They would attack any black or brown person, Muslim or not. We were all the same to them. Paki bashing was a common pastime of skinheads. In primary school, we were sneered at and called smelly Pakis. Stones were thrown at us on the way to school.
Nasreen, just your mic, if you could just move your microphone a bit further away from your mouth, completely away from your mouth. Yep, a bit more. I'm completely away. It'll pick you up, don't worry.
Is that better?
Talk to me now. Yeah, just a bit more down. Down, yeah. Oh, that's perfect. Now talk.
Okay.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. Shall I start again? Can you hear me now? So,
thank you.
I'll just start again. So growing up in the 70s and 80s, we lived in constant fear of the National Front. They would attack any black or brown person, Muslim or not. We were all the same to them. Paki bashing was a common pastime of skinheads. In primary school, we were sneered at and called smelly pakis. Stones were thrown at us on the way to school. It was really frightening. So our aunt, may she rest in peace, she had to walk us to secondary school, which was for us infantilizing, but sadly necessary. My dad was provoked and racially assaulted by co-workers at the factory he worked. My brothers were racially physically attacked in school, in town, and at the fairground. Our windows were regularly smashed with stones. We experienced verbal abuse continuously. The language barriers and lack of knowledge of our civil rights stalled our ability to seek help. We quietly accepted it all as a norm. Obviously, we were children, these were our parents. My brother's education was sabotaged. He wanted to study mechanical engineering at the local college, but his school options teacher warned that the professor there at the college was a renowned racist who had forced a black student to quit due to relentless abuse. So when they talk today about the lack of diversity in STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths, remember there is historical precedence. They could never pronounce our names correctly. Our names were mocked and ridiculed. They gave us all nicknames to make it easy for them. In the later years of secondary school, I developed a group of white friends, so they and others accepted me as all right, one of the good ones. They'd then proceed to attack other Muslims in front of me, as if I didn't feel their pain, as if I wasn't more similar to them than other white people. My cousin attended my same school. She is partially blind. The children taunted her mercilessly, first for her disability, and then the colour of her skin. Recently, my daughter was involved in a racist incident walking home from school. Ironically, on a culture day wearing traditional Kashmiri clothes, and that made her a target. A grown white man called her Paki out of his car. She was in a state of shock, but as a Gen Z, she had been exposed to a world of diversity and tolerance, so she was in a state of confusion. As she processed and talked about the incident, she teared up and it broke my heart. You'll notice that I, one person, can link how racism has hurt me and so many people around me. But that's just me. There's thousands of people with their own stories. But you won't hear them in the news. No, we are terrorists, groomers, oppressed, and helpless, unsympathetic and inhuman in the eyes of racist Britain. My parents' response to all this hate was to just keep our heads down, keep out of trouble, focus on our education. Migrants had a constant fear of deportation. Integration was an unrealistic fantasy. I remember my dad, my late father, telling us to just behave and do well, otherwise we would get kicked out, especially after he heard Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech. He was very worried for us. I used to downplay his concerns. I used to laugh it off, saying, "Look, Dad, we've got British passports, I can't do anything." But I really remembered his words when they became a terrifying reality for the Windrush generation. Our parents encouraged education, so we just put our heads down, studied hard, persevered, resulting, luckily, in successful academics and careers. Ironically, most of my family members and I work in the public sector, as we really enjoy helping others, and in particular those less privileged. We are a proud family of civil servants, teachers, doctors, dentists, drivers, and caregivers. Then joyfully, after this horrible period, living in fear, multiculturalism became mainstream. We finally felt included and heard. Our families flourished, we grew our communities, established our mosques, We felt proud of who we were and safe to express ourselves. We have participated in voluntary and charity work, climbing peaks, bike rides, running marathons for British charities. I've also organised lots of community events to bring people together. As our previous speaker said, education is key. I've organised lots of interfaith events. I've spoken in a church where most of that congregation were mostly elderly people who had never spoken to a Muslim in their life before. They were so interested in my speech that there was a long queue of people waiting to see me after the event, because the topic was charity and they were interested about, they didn't know anything about Islam, so they came up and asked me about my speech, but asked me lots of questions about Islam. So it was really heartwarming. And other church leaders came up to me and asked me to deliver similar talks at their churches as well. So that was a really nice period. But then things changed dramatically after 9/11 and Brexit. Blatant large-scale racism reared its ugly head once again. I was shocked. Friends who had on my social media were spewing Boris's rhetoric and vilified Muslims on social media. Brexit made the state of Britain evident. Home Office figures show that recorded hate crimes in the UK jumped by 41% following the referendum. We now all see how this hate has heralded a new rise of the far right, with figures like Tommy Robinson and politicians making a mockery of our faith, our people, our rights. The likes of whom don't consider Britain's role in creating the crisis and desperation to seek asylum in the first place through their colonialism, war, and genocide. The increase in Islamophobia has been exacerbated by the dangerously powerful, toxic, and biased media. Far-right rhetoric fueled and emboldened by politicians, which is sweeping across the country. Muslims are demonized constantly. I get so emotionally drained reading all the social media comments. It's frightening, really frightening. To be a Muslim or not to be can change everything in how you experience this world. The way you are seen reflects the way people treat you. And in this country, people's vision is predetermined. If all you read, see, and hear are newspapers, presenters, and radio shows and social media, which all spew the same message, Muslims are terrorists who are attacking our way of life, it unfortunately doesn't come as a huge shock that British people find it easy to fear us and hate us. Freedom of speech is being used as an excuse to spread racist views. This is state-sanctioned hatred. We are damned if we don't integrate and damned if we do. You see the comments, if Muslims are doing well, they're taking over, they're taking our jobs. I hear it in my job when I'm referring people to jobs. They say it to my face, but foreigners are taking all our jobs. When they say they are protecting their women and girls, as was expressed in the recent Unite the Kingdom march, the ironic thing is that these are exactly our fears too for our girls. There has been an increased attacks on brown women and targeting of Muslim girls, as previous speakers said, having their hijabs ripped off. The hijab is like this scarf that I'm wearing. I am genuinely and so terrified for my family and future generations. So many people I know are emigrating, professionals who have lived in the UK for all their lives, taking their valuable skills abroad because they want to secure a safer future for themselves and their children. Our enemy is large and historically successful. Their same tactics dividing us even today. For example, Palestine and Ukraine. Both tragedies, but in one case the martyrs are called brown, Muslim dead bodies, versus Christian white victims. It's really dangerous rhetoric. This is how they've maintained systems of colonialism and capitalism, by dehumanizing us and pitting us against each other. But I pride myself in trying to be an optimist. I am always an optimist. I believe that through forums such as this in the trade union movement, where we talk to one another, hear each other's experiences and points of view, we can break down walls and barriers. When I see all the counter protesters that, to stand up to racism and the unions and so on, it does restore my faith in humanity. There are lots of good people around. But let's not fool ourselves. This isn't a brown issue, it's a human rights issue. Living a life of peace and being free from persecution is a human right. So let's remember our common humanity and move forward together. This trade union truly gives me hope. So in the spirit of the recent Remembrance Day events, let's remember everyone, even those whose stories weren't permitted to be heard. For example, did you know that millions of Muslims made a massive and crucial contribution to the British war effort during both world wars, often serving the most challenging areas of conflict? They served across continents, both in combat and vital support roles. The largest contingent of Muslim soldiers served in the British Indian Army and were recruited from the Bengal Presidency, regions that are now India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. The Punjabi and Muslim Pathans were considered as the backbone of the British Army. They fought in France and Belgium in World War I and in North Africa and Italy in World War II, where they played a decisive role against Nazi Germany, victories at El Alamein and in Italy. It was also the main force fighting the Japanese in the brutal Burma campaign. Muslims from other parts of the British Empire also served. North and West Africa, thousands from Nigeria, the Gambia, British Somaliland. There were thousands who formed part of the Lascars, the seamen. They were recruited from Bengal, Yemen, and Somalia, and were essential to the British Merchant Navy. The tremendous sacrifice and service of these soldiers were critical to the overall Allied victory, though their contributions have often been historically overlooked. Nearly 1.5 million Muslims were killed in action. Asian and African nations fought even before British soldiers got involved in the world wars, fighting in the most challenging, gruesome, hostile aspects of warfare. But where are their memories? Where is their moment of silence? Where is their respect? Most of them didn't even get paid. They lie in unmarked graves where even their families struggle to track them down due to the disregard for the brown soldiers. Now, this is personal to me because my late father was a brave and disciplined soldier, a man of principles. He fought in the British Indian Army in World War II. We've been trying to track down all his details. We haven't been able to find his regiment details, but we did recently find his medals. Those medals include the King George Defence Medal, the African and Italy Stars, and various others. He was awarded for his role. He was awarded for his role in the fight against fascism. As a result of being a British war veteran and following the events in Kashmir, where we're from, with the water treaty and building of Mangla Dam by British construction companies, my father, and along with others, were offered passports and invited to England to help rebuild the nation due to Britain's post-war labour shortage. Despite the social, cultural, the climate shocks and language barriers, and facing so many racist attacks, he remained true to his principles. He had a strong work ethic. He took any jobs, and he remained hardworking as a factory labourer to his last days, despite being a decorated war veteran. My late mother supported him fully and tried helping out with working from home jobs whilst caring for us too. They instilled great values in us. I'm so proud of my late parents. And this hurts me when I see some of the social media comments where they think all Muslims and people of colour are, benefit scroungers. Most of the people I know are hardworking people and professional people. Today, my dad would be turning in his grave if he knew what his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are still facing to this day, as well as all the other migrants who helped to rebuild this country, but are constantly blamed for its problems and threatened with expulsion now that they are considered no longer useful. I'm so proud that PCS Union is holding this first Islamophobia Awareness Month this year. This will provide an important space for Muslim members and our allies coming together to reject this hate and put safety at the heart of this discussion. Being in PCS is my safe space, and I encourage other Muslims in the civil servant who are civil servants or who can join PCS and who are not members at the moment to join PCS Union today, so we are stronger to confront and eradicate Islamophobia. I just want to end with saying that I want to echo previous speakers and Mohammed Shafiq's, echo my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to the two branches who brought this crucial motion to our national conference this year. It was proposed by Ministry of Justice Associated Offices and seconded by the Revenue and Customs East Midlands branch and unanimously carried by the whole union. I want to place a special thanks on record to Austin Harney from Ministry of Justice who brought this motion, who is a strong ally and advocate for us. He's represented and supported so many members, Muslim members in his branch. So yeah, I just want to thank the PCS Union. It is hand on my heart, is my safe space, and I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to speak today. Thank you so much.
Nasreen, thank you so much. I know that was really powerful, and your blog's going to be even more powerful. So we will share that to our colleagues.
I want to show my dad's medals are there.
If you just take it back a bit back, yeah. It's because you've got the background, so we can't see it. But we'll share a picture of that.
Properly, but yeah.
Yeah, but thank you so much. We've got probably time for a few questions as well. Solidarity messages. If you're watching this for the first time and you are in the civil service, or PCS is the union that is active in your branch, join us now. You can join us and let's become active within PCS as well. So there it's on the bottom, pcs.org.uk/join. You can join up straight away. It's a bit like car insurance. You know, you have to have it. You never know when you need it, but when you do need it, you know that people will be there to support you. I'm proud of the fact that over the last couple of years, I've been successfully able to defend over 37 cases of people who've been on protest, Palestinian protests, people who've been accused of their Palestinian activism. We've been able to successfully save their jobs, win their grievances, and win their cases as well. So very, very happy to do that. And that can only happen because of the fact that you're in PCS. So very, very proud. Thank you so much, Nasreen. I don't know if which of our speakers are still here, but maybe I could just ask you one question each before we wrap up. Okay, so we've got Martin, our national president. Martin, what role can union learning and workplace training play in changing attitudes and building inclusion?
I think that's really crucial, Mohammed. But before I answer that question, can I just say a huge thank you to all of our panelist speakers tonight. Yeah. Absolutely powerful contributions from everybody, and Nasreen in particular. Absolute credit to our union and to your family, Nasreen. Yeah. But in terms of the narrative and the education, Mohammed, that is critical. As you know, another motion that was passed at the conference this year, at our annual conference, was our review and our continued review of our ARAF strategy against racism, against fascism strategy. And the whole point of that, as I mentioned earlier, is to actually take the narrative into the workplace about actually how we can challenge the far-right rhetoric that we're hearing all too often. And we would be naive in thinking in PCS that we're exempt from it. We will have PCS members who have strong views, racist views, and we absolutely have a responsibility and a duty to educate and articulate why they are wrong and why it is absolutely the right thing to do to embrace the cultural diversity of which we've all spoken about so eloquently tonight. That is going to be something that is absolutely critical. You'll also be aware, Mohammed, but everyone should be aware, if they're not already, that as part of our education program through the PCS Academy, we're absolutely increasing our education opportunities for people to join online courses and get involved in this continued education program, because we understand that if we do lurch further and further to the right, and indeed the opinion polls are correct, and we do have probably the most right-wing government, and that is saying something in this country, but the most right-wing government that any of us will ever experience. That actually is not about, as others have said, about Islam. That is not about the Jewish faith. That is not about Christianity. That is not about black people. That will be disastrous for people who have disabilities. That will be disastrous for women. That will be disastrous for people like us, trade unionists and activists. And it will absolutely set the trend, I believe, for generations to come. So the importance of that workplace activism, but also the workplace education is critical going forward. And I'm looking forward to PCS really ramping up that education so that we can get the Araf strategy embedded in every single workplace where we have a PCS presence. That has to be our goal ultimately. And I think if we do that, we can not only learn lessons from the past, but we can absolutely prevent and stop the hatred that other comrades tonight have spoken about, in the future. And that's something that is not only a goal worth pursuing, that is a goal that we have to achieve.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. I just wanted to show solidarity and love also to Farah K. She's one of our members. She was recently attacked, an Islamophobic attack. I know she's watching this. So, sister, you're not alone. We stand with you, all of us from Martin's, under Martin's leadership. This union stands with you. So much love to you and your family. Lindsay, can I ask you, what gives you hope that we can reverse the rise of Islamophobia in this country?
Things like this, but can I first say, similar to what Martin said, like speakers' contributions have been fabulous. But Nasreen, I was tearful listening to your speech. Thank you so much for having the courage to share that. That was really beautiful. And it's people like Nasreen that gives me hope. It's people like, Farah, who give me hope that actually we can fight against Islamophobia, because Muslims are not victims. I don't know a single Muslim who is a victim. I know Muslims who are survivors, and they stand up and they fight back with all of the tools at their disposal. And I'm not talking, as Martin said earlier, I'm not talking about violently fighting back. I'm talking about they stand up, they fight back within the law, they fight back using every single power that the law gives them to do that. And that's important. It's really important that's done in that way. And it's really important that we understand that as Muslims, that we are survivors, and that as Muslims, we actually can take it to the next level, and that we can continue to fight in every single way. But also solidarity of individuals, organizations, and people coming together who realize that Muslims shouldn't be alone fighting discrimination. Actually, it's going to take all of us, as I've said previously and earlier. So all of these things give me a lot of hope. But, we do need to be realistic as well and realize that Reform are in the lead in the polls. If there was an election tomorrow, Reform would be, in Downing Street. They would be, a majority, quite possibly, in Westminster. And we need to all work together to make sure that that's not the case, and that doesn't happen moving forward, and that actually our parties go from being central right and right as they are right now, and that they swing back to being central left and left, because it's only through that actually all of us have got a good and secure future here in the UK. But yeah, what gives me hope is this. So thank you so much for doing this session tonight and for working so incredibly hard to make a difference. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Can I just also promote our National Disability, Disabled Members Forum and National Black Members Committee Forum. We have a joint event on the 2nd of December, which is being chaired by our very own Vice Chair, Tracy Hilton. And it's just an opportunity for us to work together, collaborating in solidarity between the two committees. So that's on the 2nd of December. You can find out further information from the PCS website as well. And Nasreen, a question for you. What examples of effective community solidarity have you seen? And crucially especially following the race riots last year and the rise of Islamophobia?
Again, what Lindsay said, all these forums on the trade union movement, we've done more. I was saying about community events that we've done. I actually did start doing that community work as a result of the increased Islamophobia, and it was because I knew a lot of people were just afraid. There was ignorance, and it's a fear of the unknown, isn't it?
Yeah.
So any any opportunities I was given to speak at interfaith forums, I just embraced them. And I didn't feel I was qualified to speak because I think they were looking for imams, or because at that church, the church events, there was like rabbis and vicars and priests, and then there was me. But then they said, my friends who who recommended me to them, they were saying, but you're a Muslim woman who's looked by the mainstream as oppressed, so you'll be more of a powerful speaker than any imam. And no disrespect to imams, but and then it did work, because they really enjoyed my speech. They took so much interest, and they were taking my numbers, my emails, because they wanted to contact me to contribute to their future events. So I think a bit of that, and all the stuff that we do in the trade union movement really means is so important. I think that's really important for us. Any forums we can find where we can get involved, the local mosques. We've got a new mosque in our town, so we're trying to get more involved with that work on there as well, to educate people and bring non-Muslims into the mosques, which is really important as well.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Nasreen. I'm going to give the last question to Martin, if I may, because it's a PCS question. It says, how can PCS representative, local reps, branch reps, support Muslim members who may feel afraid to speak up or raise grievances about discrimination and Islamophobia?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, Mohammed, is that, and I really, this is a plea to every single PCS rep out there: engage with your members, talk to your members, use the facilities and the resources that we give you, especially in the Araf strategy, to have those conversations. But more particularly for those who are those Muslim faith who are right now are absolutely at the forefront of the hostility that is being spewed out by politicians and by the media, then you need to do two things, to my mind. First of all, you absolutely have to steadfastly defend every single member in that situation in the workplace. If they are falsely accused, as far, far too many have been in the recent demonstrations, or if they are accused because they have the audacity of defending themselves and speaking out in the workplace, you do what you should do for every single PCS member, and that is defend them to the absolute best of your ability. But if you feel that there's something more sinister at play, if you feel that your local managers or your employer is simply not listening to you, then you escalate it to your group executive committee and your group, people like Mohammed on the National Black Members Committee, Nasrin on the DWP GC, Angela Grant, brilliant black leader on the DWP as the group DWP group president. Escalate it to every single tier of the trade union, and absolutely 100%. I know I speak on behalf of myself and Fran Heathcote, the General Secretary. You escalate things to the National Union as well, because we will not tolerate division and racism in our union. But we also are determined to drive it out of our workplace and out of the civil service as well. So absolutely defend everyone who is feeling uncertain right now. Provide whatever support you can, personal and practical, but actually use the resources that you're available. And if need be, escalate those issues so we can defend and raise and escalate to the powers that be within the respective tiers of employment and indeed government through the PCS parliamentary group as well. So a wide ranging set of things that we can do, Mohammed, but every single one it's got to be based at respect and dignity. And trying to get, I cannot possibly comprehend what Nasrin, her family and others, yourself, Mohammed, have been through personally. But I can do whatever I can to be empathetic and to understand and try to understand the humanity that is involved in this. And that is the plea to every single PCS rep out there. Embrace that humanity. And if you find a difficulty yourself in dealing with it, escalate it, and we will provide that support.
Thank you, Martin. I just want to say to people watching this, you were the very first person, you were a tower of strength to me over the last 2 years. And I wouldn't have been able to get through that without your friendship and your support, Angela's as well. So thank you so much for all that you do. I know you're sometimes underappreciated as national president, but we love you in the National Black Members Committee. And thank you as well for everything that you do. Thank you so much to Lindsay. Absolutely love you, Lindsay. You're doing some amazing work up there in Scotland. Thank you so much. And Nasreen, wow, you blew us away today. Thank you so much as well. And thank you, everybody. I want to say thank you to the equality team, particularly Law, my vice chair, Tracy Hilton, Tracy Abrahams, Levoy, all the other people on the committee who've allowed me and Tracy, for example, to just have the freedom to put these sort of events together. As I said, we've got the joint event during Disability Awareness Month next week. On the 2nd of December. We've got Holocaust Memorial Day, which happens towards the end of January. Proud once again that PCS is doing a special session for that. Actually, we are the consistently anti-racist. We don't tolerate racism from any form, any shape in our union. I'm really proud of all the work that we do. If you want to get in touch with us, thank you so much to everybody. Share the video. And as Martin said, if you ever need any help, we're all here to help and support you. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Good night.